My name is Joe Ball and I am the Victorian Commissioner for LGBTIQA Communities. My role is about advocacy, representation and implementing Pride in Our Future, which is Australia's first ever 10-year whole-of-government LGBTIQA strategy. My pronouns are he, him, and wherever I go I say that I'm proudly transgender. And I do that because for me that is true. I'm very proud to be transgender, but I also do it because it's a political thing to do. And it's important for transgender people to be able to see representation at senior levels of government and to make that presence seen. And also that my presence is known in rooms where decisions are made about us, but rarely with us. Some of you, probably not many people in this room, but maybe people who were in the last session heard, but some of you know that 4.5 months ago, my partner and I welcomed our baby girl, Rosa, into the world. Rosa's birth wasn't just an incredible milestone for our family. It was a moment that underscored how far we've come as a society and how much we have to protect. The fact that I am recognised as Rosa's father on her birth certificate, that my partner and I were able to access the fertility services we needed, that our family is legally protected, none of that happened by accident. It only exists because of decades of struggle by activists, advocates, parents and allies. These rights, these basic human rights, were fought for by people who may never have personally benefited from them. And now, as we see attacks on LGBTIQA+ rights growing around the world, we must ask ourselves, who will defend those rights? So my daughter arrived at 1 minute to midnight on the 6th of November. That was the day that Trump was re-elected. Of course, I had hoped that she would be born on the day America elected its first black woman president. But I do like to think that she, in some way, saved the day. We cannot afford to import the culture wars from the US. But the truth is, we're already here. The rise of far-right politics is not just about one leader or one country. It is about a movement that seeks to flatten the complexity of human experience. It tells us that diversity is a problem, that inclusion is an attack, and that difference is to be feared. And it is effective because it offers people something simple at a time when life feels overwhelmingly complex. We live in an era of rapid change, social media, AI, economic pressures, climate disasters, and political instability. And they all make the world extremely uncertain and feel uncertain. And when people feel insecure, they look for clarity. That's tragically why slogans like "Make America Great Again" or their Australian equivalents, they do resonate with people. They promise a return to a world that is easier to understand, where there is only us and there is them, where you don't have to think about gender, race, disability, or, God forbid, intersectionality. But this isn't just rhetoric, it has material consequences on people's lives. We are seeing attacks on diversity and inclusion not only in politics, but in workplaces, universities, maybe some of you have felt them, and public services. In the US, trans people have been erased from public institutions, from US public websites run by the government, and they were done through executive orders. Research on gender, climate and migration is being defunded, and in Australia we are seeing similar trends. Academic funding is questioned, community services are under attack, and the framing of inclusion as a radical or elite agenda. And yet, trans people who are so positioned as part of that threat make up less than 1% of the population. We are among the poorest and most marginalised in society. For example, trans women experience some of the highest unemployment rates in Australia. Yet they are being painted as the powerful elite, while billionaires fund campaigns to strip away our rights. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this narrative so compelling? And I put it that it's because people are suffering. There are wars and protracted crises, floods, fires and cyclones made worse every year by climate change. There is the ever-rising cost of living, the pressure of a world that feels increasingly fragmented. When suffering is not acknowledged, it turns into resentment, and that resentment is weaponized, turned sideways and downwards, directed at those who are also struggling. And yet, on the progressive side, we have our own challenge. Too often we are suffering with a politics of purism, what I call radical individualism, a politics where being personally right becomes more important than being together, where being heard is more important than listening, where we tear each other down over phrasing rather than build collective solidarity. Binaries themselves are part of the problem, not just the binaries of gender, but the binaries of good and bad, right and wrong, perfect ally, failed ally, correct and cancelled. And we need to think about beyond the moral performance of radicalism and instead focus on building movements that actually change material conditions. It's not just faces at the table and getting the right words. Because at the end of the day, we are living a collective human experience, and it is complex. Struggle and suffering are universal. The form it takes differs, worse for some, less for others at different moments, but it is there for all of us. So how do we hold space for that complexity? How do we move away from an us versus them and towards a we? Not a perfect we, not a pure we, but a we that is flawed, messy, contradictory, yet still working towards something better together. That, of course, is the task that I can't cover off in 7 minutes. So, where do we go from here? I see two solutions that I put forward to you, and both lie in the people who are bridge builders. These are the people whose lives span the complexity of human experience, the ones who refuse to fit neatly into boxes, who understand the contradiction not as something to fear, but as something to work with. I'd like to take the life of Imam Mushan Hendricks, a gay Muslim man and the world's, as we know it, only openly gay imam. For years, he was a lifeline for LGBTIQA+ Muslims, holding space for their faith and identity to coexist. He built a community where people didn't have to choose between who they are and what they believe. He dedicated his life to this work, and for it, he was recently killed. His murder is a devastating reminder that bridge builders often bear the greatest risks. But we do not honour him by retreating into fear, we honour him by continuing his work. And that brings me to my final point. It is not enough to celebrate the bridge builders, although we must. We must ourselves be bridge builders. We must be the ones who create spaces where people do not have to choose between different parts of themselves. We must be the ones who reject easy binaries and lean into the complexity of human experience. We must be the ones who remind the world that inclusion is not a threat. In fact, it is our greatest strength. We are so quick to critique each other, but too slow to uplift those doing the hard work of connection. Because a world that builds bridges instead of walls doesn't happen by accident. It will happen because we choose to recognise and support those already laying the foundations, and because we choose to be part of that work ourselves. Thank you.